My number two is The Umbrellas of Cherbourg
Yes, definitely a hard left turn.
from 1964, directed by Jacques Demy, starring Catherine Deneuve, Nino Castellanovo, and Vernon. Quick logline: a young woman separated from her lover by war faces a life-altering decision. It's funny growing up in Bollywood where every movie is a musical, in a way. Song and dance and such has been very much part of my movie watching experiences, movie loving experiences. But I had not really watched a true blue musical until I was much older. And I'm discarding sort of Mary Poppins and Sound of Music. I mean, sort of West Side Story or Hello Dolly or these kind of movies that are out and out musical. I came to them pretty late, and Singing in the
Hmm.
Rain. And, some I love and some I don't. But of course, over time, I've come to love them more. But I think this movie, Umbrellas of Cherbourg, plays a critical role in my journey of just loving musicals or enjoying them or appreciating them for what they are. Because I
Hmm.
didn't, even though I grew up watching musicals, I don't think I was an immediately someone who was immediately drawn to them in the Hollywood musical context where everything and every dialogue is kind of sung, and and that's the storytelling is done through music. I love Singing in the Rain for sure, and it's, in fact, we covered that on my list way back when. But I think this movie really challenged me because when I first watched it, the movie kind of gets into that right off the bat where every line is going to be sung in the
Right,
movie, and I was like,
right.
oh my gosh, we're this is what this is. We're really doing this. And made me very uncomfortable in the first 15-20 minutes. And also because a lot of the singing is not great, and maybe it's because of the language difference as well. Not everybody is a great singer, but then at the same time there's something that just kept me going with it. And by the end of it, I just was kind of totally awed by it, moved by it, and you kind of just give in, you surrender to that this is how this movie is, and this is how the story is going to be told, and it becomes
Hmm.
totally normal that this is of course how this world is. Of course, the bright colors and cinematography and beautiful people, Catherine Deneuve and Nino, all of it sort of just pulls you in this movie, and you're along for the ride. So, but yeah, before I go further, had you watched this movie before?
I had not seen it.
Oh,
For some reason, in the last, I don't know, 6 or 8 months, this movie sort of seems to be out there in the ether on like film Twitter and Letterbox
yeah,
for some
because Greta
reason.
Gerwig has been talking a lot
Oh, is
about
that why?
this for
Oh, okay.
Barbie. Like, this has been one of her inspirations,
Oh,
so
that's
that
why.
could be a
Okay.
reason. Yeah.
Yeah, so I that is actually the first time I'd heard of it, honestly.
Oh,
Like it's sort of in the ether in the last. So I bet you're right, it's totally Greta. And when it was on when you put it on the list, I was like, okay, cool. I this people are talking about it, but I had no clue it was a musical. And it's not even really a musical. It's more like an opera in the sense of people are just sing-songing the dialogue. They're
yeah,
not actual musical numbers and songs,
right,
and it's not like you could listen to the soundtrack and be like, oh, this is my favorite song. It's just every
right.
line of dialogue is just sing-songy sort of spoken, which very similar to you. I found it very off-putting and odd in the beginning, and I was like, wait a second, oh wow, this is actually like literally an opera now. The whole movie's gonna be like this. And it kept a distance actually between me and the characters. Like I couldn't get into the movie because of that until it just gradually like pulls you in. And then by the end of the movie, I found it very effective, and I understood more of like what they were doing, what the intent of this was, which was this story, which is a very sad story, essentially about two
Hmm.
people that fall in love, but because of the choices they make, basically decide not to be together, even
Hmm.
though they might have should have been together, and maybe they do still love each other at the end, even though they have now their own lives. So I was interpreting that the rest of the whole film to be like it's basically a Hollywood musical without this Hollywood quote unquote Hollywood ending or Hollywood story. It's
Right.
a story of a real life, what can happen and what your choices mean and the different things you do. And when you don't put love at the top of your priority list, what can happen, but told in a way that feels like it's a Technicolor musical from the 40s. And the song, they're not the song, the sing song dialogue, the incredible use of color and the sets
Mm.
and the gliding cameras, and it reminded me a lot of Wes Anderson too in terms of symmetrical
Yeah.
framing and movement of camera and very controlled like things in the environment. but the actual story is incredibly sad and very true to life. And I like that there's that juxtaposition between what the story
Totally.
actually is and the way that they're telling it.
Yeah, it's such a whimsical way of telling the story that
Right.
literally everybody sings,
Yeah.
but there's something so real and heartbreaking.
Yep.
You're totally right. And yeah, especially like when he has to go to war, like that
Right.
scene, I was in tears watching it this time because we've been building up to this whole point, and you see the love they share. There's
Yeah.
something about, sharing the love that they have for each other through music. And of course, the beautiful setting of the place they're in, all of
Hmm.
it, that it's heartbreaking when he leaves. But on the other hand, even though it is melodramatic in that sense, the performances are actually fairly deadpan, because I
Right.
think, and that's important, I think, because if they were emoting a lot more in addition to all the music and the singing, it would probably be unbearable. Like, you
Hmm.
have to almost sort of, like, these people are vessels for the dialogue and the music.
Right.
It's not that they're not emoting at all, but it's fairly controlled for the most part, which I
Exactly.
think is an interesting, once again, a very compelling and interesting way of telling the story. And you follow along. That's the other thing, the universality of these
Hmm.
emotions. You don't understand the language, you may even miss dialogues that are sung here and there, but you're totally with these people. You
Yep.
understand the mother's point of view, what she's trying to do. You understand the love of these people. You understand the situation with the guy and his aunt and the
Yeah.
caretaker who's coming in to take care of her, all of it. And then, like you said, the final scene at this gas station, and just the coldness of it, but also
Yeah.
the vibrancy of it, how it's shot, is just absolutely heartbreaking. And she shows up there with her, mink coat, and she has a better life,
Hmm.
and has kids and everything. But it's a sad story, but it's also not sad in the sense that they both found different lives.
Correct.
And in a way, they found the dreams that they were looking for, just in a different manifestation. Like, he seems happy with this girl, and
Oh yeah.
the kid, he always wanted a gas station of his own.
Yep.
I don't think Catherine Deneuve fully knew what she wanted. Like, all she knew was love, and all she knew was to be with him. But
Hmm.
I think, based on her environment and her upbringing, because of her mother, I think wanting a better life and access to more is
Right.
something that she probably did want, in a way, even though it's not fully expressed. And so, yeah, it's the complexities of life, and also life kind of unfolding it to be what you want it to be, whether you know it or not, is kind of what I end up taking away from this.
Yeah, they both ended up happy, but just
Yeah.
not happy together. And there is that acknowledgement, I think, in both those performances, that final scene where you can tell they're both sort of thinking about, oh, what would have happened if we had stayed
Mm-hmm.
together? Because they did have a love, but
Mm-hmm.
they chose not to pursue that. And they both ended up in other relationships. Like you said, got everything that they wanted. But there's that sort of, what would have happened is still a
What could have
fun,
been.
yeah, it's still a fun sort of thing to think about, I think, for these characters, even though they know that you can never go back, and they're happy where they are. And the choice of the male to not see his daughter, because he left her pregnant and never
Right.
met his own child, and she's out there in the car. He says, nope, I don't need to see her, because
Yeah.
that's not his life. He has his own family now. He has his own life that he's in. Very, very true to life, I think. All the emotions of this movie I felt were very grounded and real and complex,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just how life is, right? You make decisions, and then you live with them, and you hope that it turns out, and it did for both of them. But you still wonder, what if I made that other choice? Or
Yeah.
what would have happened then? Would we have been just as happy? Maybe it wouldn't have worked out between these two people. You
And I
never
think it
know.
wouldn't have, actually.
I mean, in terms of where they ended up, I mean, he, like you said, he always wanted the gas station. She didn't really seem to be that into that dream for him. And you're right. I think her poor upbringing, she wanted material wealth, and she got it. And he would never
Mhm.
have delivered that to her, because he just wanted to get his gas station going. So it's almost like it probably would not have worked, even though they did have genuine, like, love for each other. Love isn't the only thing,
Right.
is what this movie's trying to say. I mean,
Yeah.
disagree with that or not, but I think that's what the movie's trying to say.
Or I would just contradict myself and say maybe it would have worked because maybe that's all you need and you make it work no matter what. Because that's the thing. There's something about the music and the singing and the heartbreak. It's not just, young love that just fades away.
Right,
Like
right,
Catherine
right.
Deneuve is like a shell of a person, as beautiful and perfect looking that she is. She's haunted by this love. Like this thing has changed her completely, which again, what better way to communicate that but song, until you are comfortable with it.
Yeah, no, again, it took me like probably a half an hour to be like, okay, this actually literally is, they're singing, but it's not songs. It's sort of, again, an opera is the best way to describe it. But it sucked me in, at least after that initial sort of like, wait a second, because I had no clue. And then definitely affected me to the end. So I'm glad you put this on the list. I definitely would go back to this film for sure in the future and found it very affecting. And again, I think there was some, as a fan of Wes Anderson, I did see a lot of him
That's a great parallel,
as an influence, even with the chapters.
Yeah,
he does that a lot in his movies. And there's like this is the summer months. Season and the months in this film. And I know he's influenced a lot by French cinema. And I wonder if he's ever talked about this film. But
I'm sure he has. I mean, this is kind of a classic inspiration piece for so many directors. So I'm glad you liked it.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.